Have I been canceled yet?
So, in my last episode, I talked about the role of information technology, not just in our daily lives, but in the lives of us in the cooperative extension system, and how what we consume and the way that we consume it in information space, particularly now in digital media, has changed over the course of the past 130 years.
And the reason I spent so much time on that is not just because it's an important topic, because I believe it is, regardless of what industry or what profession or walk of life that you're in, but also because I wanted to use it to kind of build a background for some of my future plans for what this podcast hopefully will eventually be. But to figure out where I'm going, it's probably going to be useful to help retrace our steps to where we've been and how we've gotten to where we are today. And I say we collectively because, in my opinion, my career in the extension service has been partnering with the people that I serve every day. So that's why I'm using the collective we. But really, what it is just retracing a little bit of the steps of how I've gotten to where I'm at today and how that's going to build some of the definition for how things are going to move forward. So I'll get into that right away.
And oh, by the way, if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm Luke Byers, and you're listening to and/or watching Gab in the Cab. So the next few minutes that I'm going to spend are going to be kind of like filing your taxes. They're important, but they're probably one of the least interesting things that you'll do with your life. But I'll just introduce myself a little bit. Like I said, my name's Luke Byers, and I am the Agriculture and Natural Resources Program Manager for the River Valley Extension District, which is quite a mouthful. And for people who are usually outside of the extension world, that probably means almost nothing. And so let me just kind of walk things back just a few years to explain how I got to where I am and what that means. In 2022, I became the Agriculture and Natural Resources Agent for the River Valley Extension District. So I'm going to continue trying to unpack some of these terms as I go along. So, what does it mean for me to be an agriculture and natural resources agent? So, basically, how it works is whenever I'm an agent, I am technically an employee of the state through Kansas State University, but I am accountable to my local extension district or my county. And so my service area is, in my case, it's a four-county area. It's the River Valley Extension District, Clay, Cloud, Republic, and Washington counties that formed a district for extension purposes. So a lot of this is kind of making things really unclear. And so I guess I'm just going to have to keep unpacking things. So the way that things work in Kansas is that extension units are either counties or their districts. So a county basically meaning political subdivisions of a state, and within them they have their own governments, hence them being political subdivisions. And within those governments they have county agents who are technically employees of the state, but they essentially work on behalf of the county. Districts, extension districts, are whenever multiple counties say, okay, we're going to continue to have our own local county governments, but for purposes of extension services, we're going to combine forces and have a single agent or a team of agents provide extension services for multiple counties. So that's what I was as an agent for those four counties: Clay, Cloud, Republic, and Washington counties in Kansas. So that's kind of how that situation was. In terms of what the extension services are, that's something that's really evolved over time. So, whenever the extension service was established nationwide back in 1914, basically what it was bringing the agricultural research from land grant universities. So, that would be places like Kansas State University, Oklahoma State, basically a lot of the ones that say state or the ones that say A&M or agricultural in front of them, because a lot of them, the land grant universities started as agricultural colleges, was their predominant area of research and teaching. And so bringing that research, bringing those improved methods in agriculture, technology, all that sort of stuff to farmers across America. And the reason that was important was because prior to the 1920s, a majority of America worked in the agricultural industry, which is kind of crazy to think about that just over 100 years ago, a majority of people worked in agriculture. Now we're down to something like 2%, which is kind of crazy. However, I mean, obviously, agriculture takes up the largest land area of basically any profession in America, simply because it takes so much land. I mean, land is basically your primary asset of interest whenever it comes to agriculture. That's the thing that makes agriculture agriculture, is the amount of land that it requires to do things. Despite the fact that a majority of American citizens are in cities or are in non-agricultural industries, what had happened is you now have a ton of physical space, ton of area, like in this image behind me, that's sparsely populated with various people who are in need of technological and informational resources in order to advance their industry. Whenever you think about other industries, whether they be in retail or engineering, or human resources or finance or things like that, a lot of times those locations get concentrated into more densely populated areas. And so the cost of disseminating research based information to those sectors is significantly lower per person than it is in the agricultural space, or at least it was historically prior to the advent of the internet. So basically, what you had is you had in 1914 a majority of the country living in sparsely populated areas where it was very difficult to get research based information out to. And that's why the county based extension service was established. Fast forward 112 years to 2026, now we're in a totally different landscape because some of the greatest strides in innovation and technological advancement over the course of the past 112 years, kind of like I highlighted in the previous episode, have been in information technology. Now we're basically, everywhere we go, human beings live in a digital, interconnected online space, no matter where they are at in the world, except for rural Kansas because we have no service. But but that's kind of the dynamic that's changed over the past 120, 130 years that I talked about in the last episode, is the change in telecommunications and how that has kind of impacted the role of cooperative extension. So a lot of people say, okay, well, now that technology has made it this far, farmers no longer need the cooperative extension service. On the one hand, that rebuttal is correct. Whenever you live in a nonprofit organization ecosystem, your goal is basically to solve specific problems. And the specific problem that the cooperative extension service has been seeking to resolve for the past 112 years has been, how do we get research based information to be efficiently and effectively disseminated to agriculture, which is not only, still one of the larger industries in America, but also one of the most critical to things like national security and human flourishing. A lot of times, NPOs or government organizations will want to cling to the idea that the problem they are seeking to resolve continues to be unresolved so that they can perpetuate the existence of the organization. And the rebuttal to that from the cooperative extension service side of things is, well, that simply means that we just need to find the areas where there continues to be gaps, information dissemination gaps, in the agricultural industry, which has been exacerbated by the acceleration of information technology development, in my opinion. Why don't I just kind of bring things back together again and kind of put put the nail on the head in terms of just defining what this is all about and how I'm bringing this all together into a cohesive narrative so that we can kind of go forward together with a common understanding. The point of what I'm saying is not to necessarily gripe about the condition of the cooperative extension service or our related industries or partners. Really, what it is to say that if we're going to fill the informational gaps that are observable in the agricultural industry, it's going to require incorporating a lot of the innovative uh, techniques, technologies, methods, and approaches that have shown to be successful over the course of the past 30 years, specifically in information technology. The reason that this is problematic isn't because it's necessarily preferable for the public to latch on to extension or university based resources than resources from private industry or private individuals. Per se, that's not necessarily true. What is true is what I mentioned in my last episode. In a world where the gratification of an algorithm for exposure is the metric by which information is shown to be successful in the immediate term, that generates a lot of problems if we're actually interested in getting down to brass tacks about what works, what's useful, what's informative, and what's true. So to tie it up and put a bow on it, in my opinion, the imminent necessity of the extension service to be a source of factually corroborated information that's biased towards serving its rural local communities needs to be kind of the way that it anchors itself, but it's got a long way to go in terms of improving its methods of information delivery. But maybe the question is, why here? Why now? Why under these circumstances? Well, to answer that question, you got to go back to October 2024, whenever I first started the Gap in the Cab podcast. It was kind of an introductory move into digital spaces in terms of our extension programming, because, like I said, for a lot of extension's history, our programming has consisted of in-person uh, meetings, field days, telephone calls, snail mail, a lot of those different kinds of ways that we communicate with people. And because a lot of our existing audience is made up of people that prefer a lot of those communication methods, we've missed out on a lot of opportunities to build the audience from the younger generations that are going to be living through the information ecosystem that we're in currently. So I started the Gap in the Cab podcast as kind of a pet project of mine, and I only released, in fact, technically I only released 9 episodes. I said I released 11 because a couple of them were kind of meh, just incorporating material from other podcasts that were related to the extension outreach activities that I was doing. What really kind of pushed me into this area where maybe it is a little bit more of a necessity for me to start incorporating these digital outreach methods is the fact that I've changed roles. In January, I took a role with K-State Extension at the state level in the Department of Agricultural Economics at Kansas State University as an extension assistant. And really, what my role is there is I'm currently shadowing someone who's going to be retiring this fall, but I'm basically going to be the point person for the department's digital extension outreach activities. And that really pushed me into this world on the one front. But I'm also only currently there 30 hours a week, so three-quarter time. My workload, my professional day-to-day job workload, the rest of my time is with the River Valley Extension District as their agriculture and natural resources program manager. The reason that I'm a program manager now, as distinct from an agent, is because of university guidelines and definitions with the state and all that sort of stuff. An agent is technically a full-time employee that is technically employed by the state. A program manager is technically either a part-time or a full-time employee that's technically employed by the county or the local extension unit. Even though I do the exact same functions as an agent would, just with less frequency. And that's the key thing. Whenever it comes to my actual field outreach to my constituents here in the 4 counties that I cover, my ability to do the same amount of outreach at the same efficiency level as I did before is totally different. Now, instead of me being able to spend my time developing some field days, taking some phone calls, and things like that, now it's got to be high impact, low time. And that's really kind of the recipe. If I'm going to reach a lot of people, the way that I have to do things, the way I have to deliver information, it can't just resonate with my audience. It also has to be, from an efficiency standpoint, competitive with where the rest of the information technology industry is right now. So I've decided personally that if I'm going to maintain the kind of impact that I'd like to see in outreach programs, it's not going to be confined, so to speak, to the traditional methods, the traditional ways of doing things that have kind of persisted for the past 112 years, basically, with some minor tweaks here and there. If I'm going to do a podcast, it's got to be more than just audio. It's got to be more than just YouTube. Backgrounds such as these, things are going to be rocky along the way, and I can show you that things are rocky along the way because if I do this, you can tell that I'm actually in a gray walled room. So that's kind of the journey, the experience that I'd like for us to go on together. Let's get to a place where the extent, the impact is comparable. That's the word I'm looking for. To where things are comparable to where the rest of the industry is, because that comparability of adequacy, of competence, whenever it comes to information delivery, that's what's really going to help our farmers and ranchers and our rural communities go outside and touch grass in a world of information anarchy. So, if you want to engage in the guilty pleasure of conspiracy theories and clickbait, have at it. But whenever you're done, come back to Gab in the Cab and touch grass with me. And hopefully, as things move along with this process, it's going to be more than just Gab in the Cab. Also, in terms of making sure that our information is accurate, user friendly, timely, all of those things. Get moving beyond just using an Excel spreadsheet, getting to a place where we can actually have digital technological interfaces, implementing the usefulness of AI and keeping all that grok crap out. And speaking of artificial intelligence and precision agriculture and stuff like that, agriculture as an industry has really been at the forefront of a lot of technological innovations across the globe just in the past 10 or 20 years. We're really on the cutting edge of a lot of those things. But whenever it comes to integrating a lot of those technologies, not only into our information delivery, but into our management practices, we're really behind the eight ball compared to a lot of other sectors.
I mean, one of the most common refrains that I hear from farmers in my line of work is, I have all of this data and I have no idea what to do with it. So it strikes me as very ironic that agriculture as an industry is at the forefront of tons of technological innovation that's incorporating precision technology, machine learning, artificial intelligence, the whole gamut. And yet we are at a loss for how do we personally integrate them into our own operations.
The corollary that I thought of was something that I was taught by a professor of mine in agribusiness management, going on 7 years ago at this point. And what he said is that agriculture as a sector has some of the worst human resources departments of any sector. And part of that is because there's so many uh, organizations, so many family farms where, well, the family is the farm. And so you don't really have a whole lot in the way of a human resources apparatus that you'd have in some of these larger industries, some of these industries where a lot of the companies are concentrated into a handful of companies. So, in some ways, that phenomenon is understandable, but just because it's understandable doesn't mean it's something that we should just explain away. In the same way that whenever we talk about integrating precision technology or information,
And I'll be the first one to confess that I've understood the strain on time and resources and human capital that is experienced by people who work in agriculture every day. But to me, that has really just highlighted the importance of improving the efficiency related to the cooperative extension services information delivery system, more than just an information delivery system, and information integration into our communities. And just like there's a lot of transitions going on in the economy, in technology, in agriculture, it's often that these changes put a fire underneath us to be able to step into those improved versions of ourselves. And that's how I'd really like to characterize and summarize what I've been talking about for almost 20 minutes now. Basically, the cooperative extension service has a great legacy of serving people in the agricultural industry, the industry that I would argue is the most paramount to things like uh, national security for one, food security for another, but really establishing the integration of family units with their communities. I really think it's pivotal because it's the original industry. Agriculture is the original industry. Before any other industry was invented, there was agriculture. But if the cooperative extension system and the people that are served by it want it to continue the impact that it's had historically into the future, then it's going to require a lot of adaptation. And it's too cliche to say, oh, we got to change with the times. But what it is we have to integrate our practices with the way that information systems are developing. And if we're unwilling to do that, then we're going to become an anachronism, carried along and supported by taxpayer dollars from an ancient statute. So the question that I ask for myself is, what am I willing to do to achieve that aspiration? Let's find out.